We've talked a lot about the new 2019 Mac Pro rumored to come out, but Apple also confirmed they're working on a new Thunderbolt display, and the more I think about it, there's a lot of uncertainties we don't know. So what do I like to do? Needlessly speculate. Let's begin. The Thunderbolt display, back when it was discontinued, was even outdated back then. A lot of people forget this, but that Thunderbolt display was still available to purchase when the 5K iMac came out. So you have an all-in-one design with a razor-thin Mac. Everything's built in an enclosure. You have a whole computer in there with really powerful specs, supporting that 5K display. And then you also had that giant bulging monitor that was not a 5K resolution. In fact, it was just a 2K screen with a handful of ports on the back, not even a power button, and yet it needed all of that space. Why? I mean, it was good that they discontinued it, because if they still sold it to this day at that original $1,000 starting price, like, dear God, why are you keeping this around? And that's kind of my opinion right now on the current trash can Mac Pro. It's like, why are you keeping this around? 256 gigs at $3,000? Anyway, I think it'll be very interesting to see what types of display technology Apple's able to come up with now that they can fit a beautiful 500 nit, very wide color gamut into that small a design with the iMac Pro. And on top of that, that's filled with tons of fans, tons of CPU, tons of RAM, all that stuff they're able to pack into that small a design. Imagine if Apple was just given the task of building a 5K monitor with a stand, and that's about it. My personal guess is that they're going to be trying to replacing the purpose of the LG ultrafine monitors. Apple actually worked with LG on those external monitors to try to fine-tune them to what a MacBook desires. And in a lot of ways, while they are made by LG, they do kind of feel like an Apple-designed product, given a couple reasons. For one, there's only Thunderbolt 3 ports. There's no display port, there's no HDMI, there's no weird VGA that some monitors still have. They only have Thunderbolt 3. However, one of these happens to be very powerful and allows you to connect it to your MacBook Pro while charging it and outputting a 5K resolution with one single port, which is really cool. So it definitely feels like those monitors, while again made by LG, are still designed and thought of by Apple. And Apple's just kind of like, well, we don't want to do it, but we'll give LG a chance to share their products in our stores. But I think the LG Ultrafines were doing pretty well and people were fairly satisfied with them, that Apple's starting to think, you know what, maybe we can do this ourselves. Which, this is where the really interesting stuff begins. Originally, there was only one size if you wanted an external monitor made by Apple. 27 inches at a 2K resolution. And may I add, one size bezel all the way around, which does look pretty cool. You know, it was a big bezel, and I'm hoping with this next generation they're able to shrink bezels a little bit. But now with the LG Ultrafine, we actually have two different monitor sizes. Of course, with the smaller one not costing as much, even though it's a 4K display, very vibrant, looks great. If you don't want to spend, you know, $1,300 on a 5K 27-inch monitor, you have that option. So if Apple's entering back into the Thunderbolt display market, will they also come at it from two different angles? Lots of things in 2018 and probably 2019 are going to be getting size variants, or 3 or 4. We got 2 Apple Watch sizes. Wouldn't it make sense that if Apple's coming back to the display market, that they bring very light, very portable 21.5-inch version alongside the 27-inch version? I'm not sure. I think it could be possible though. On top of that though, going back to the bezels thing, a very common complaint we got with the new iMac Pro was that people were saying, yeah, it's cool, yeah, it's powerful, however, aren't these bezels kind of big for 2018, given that this is a year and this is an era in which we're just trying to minimize bezels? So maybe that could be the primary focus on this one. Not making it just look like the old Thunderbolt display, but thinner, but also reducing that bezels on the side as well, and that might be that premium price you're paying for. It's also possible that they may not have a focus on this, given that the iMac Pro definitely had a focus on being powerful, and they weren't too focused on making the bezel smaller, but I'm guessing making bezels smaller probably brings up the price point a little bit, and they figured the price point was fairly high already, and if Apple makes a 5K monitor, that's likely going to be expensive enough as it is. So I wouldn't hold your breath on the idea that if Apple does release a new generation Thunderbolt 3 monitor, the focus will be on thinner bezels, because while I do use over on the Tailosive Gaming channel an Acer Predator 2K 144Hz monitor, that has pretty thin bezels and they look pretty cool, and I like looking at a display with minimal bezels on the side because there's just less fat all around. It doesn't improve the performance of the computer, and the LG Ultrafines are definitely not about design. They kind of look like an old Dell monitor, but as long as the display looks good, I think Apple's going to be okay with it, and they don't care too much about bezel size. One thing though that I think would be really helpful and maybe would justify an Apple Thunderbolt display costing a lot more is, what if we started embedding the really good sounding speakers that we have in the current iMac Pro? It's got extra speakers up here and extra speakers at the bottom. And the iMac Pro is a very loud sounding all-in-one design. What if you don't want to pay $5,000 for that type of sound and you just want something to be a desktop workstation to work with your laptop? Perhaps this new Thunderbolt display could also get those speakers. So why not put some powerful speakers in there? Now when you plug your newly designed hexa-core MacBook Pro, which is rumored to come out in June, when you plug that into the newly designed Apple Thunderbolt monitor, you get really good sound. On top of that, throw in the 1080p webcam, because I imagine that takes up like literally nothing. LG Ultrafine 5K display has a webcam as well, but bizarrely not the 21.5 inch. Not really sure why. Like, if you're paying that much, why not just throw a webcam in? What difference does it make? Either way, I think those are some of the ways they could really sweeten the deal on that Thunderbolt monitor. On top of that, I'd like to add that while you're paying for a very high resolution, while you're paying for that 5K that is so rich, there's actually very few computers that can actually support outputting at 5K in the first place. Like, if you're using a Windows PC, you can't use the LG Ultrafine at 5K, because on a Windows PC, which Windows does support 5K monitors, whereas Apple's made a more efficient way using Thunderbolt 3, you can plug in a MacBook Pro directly into the LG Ultrafine and it supports that 5K resolution. So these monitors are definitely catering to the Apple ecosystem people, I'm guessing, compared to the rest of the market in terms of what other external monitors you can get. The Apple Thunderbolt one is probably not going to be the most affordable, or if you're looking for HDMI ports, display ports, they're not going to be there. It's specifically going to be catering MacBook Pro users, but at the end of the day, can a MacBook Pro really output a lot of content at 5K in the first place? Other than, you know, the desktop, of course it can support that, but if you start watching 5K content, if you start trying to play a game at a high resolution on your external monitor, I feel like the things you'll be plugging it into are kind of not worth it. So if you own an iMac Pro and you're in that rare percentile, which can support a lot of games and a lot of content at that actual 5K resolution, I think it might make sense to invest in the Apple Thunderbolt display, because you keep everything on your desk made by Apple, so it's more pure. I'm sure that optimization's gonna be there, and it'd be really cool if you got the speakers on that new Thunderbolt monitor going alongside your iMac Pro monitor, build up the sound as much as possible. And on top of that, I'm just excited to see a monitor be that crazy thin. If Apple can squeeze an entire professional class workstation into this big, just the monitor can be a lot less. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Apple Thunderbolt display coming in either in 2019, or who knows, we could get that one more thing moment this June? What do you think they should do about it? Would you be curious in investing in one, depending on the price, of course? I think I might get one just because having two monitors with the iMac Pro would be kind of nice for editing stuff, but I want to know what you guys think, so please let me know in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.